favorite metal band of all time. Hi, this is Alex Skolnick of Testament, and these are my 5 favorite riffs. First pick, let's go with Van Halen, Mean Streets. I know I'm not the first one to pick this riff, but to me it just captures everything that's great about a riff. It's angry, more than was expected for a band like Van Halen, which had a lot of very pop melodies, especially in the vocal tune. But that whole tune captures some aggression and intensity. And I can't think of any metal players that weren't influenced by that riff in one way or the other. I think Van Halen sometimes gets overshadowed by his own brilliant lead playing and shredding, or whatever you want to call it, because there's so much more to him. Timing, swing, tone, and especially riffs. And Mean Street really captures the best of the riffs. Second pick is Sehnsucht by Rammstein. And for some reason, that riff just hits me really hard. I don't hear that song talked about quite as much as some of the others, like Du Hast. But when I hear that, I can't stop moving. It's just a riff in E. It's just a few chords surrounding E. I wouldn't say it's the most clever or unorthodox, yet it manages to be familiar, but sound really unique at the same time. I think Rammstein's another example, kind of like Eddie Van Halen. Riffs are not entirely what they're known for. They might be known for lyrical content, keyboards, strange moods, and other things. Fire, yeah, crazy show. But I think some of the riffs are right up there, and they excite me. My third pick, it's going to be Into the Void by Black Sabbath. I think they really wrote the book on riffs. Riffs were part of rock and roll for sure. And you think of great riffs by Cream and the Beatles, parts that came before Black Sabbath, but they just took it to another level. Tony, as far as tone, came up with Into the Void, and it's just a perfect example of a riff that fits the tone. He had tone unlike anybody else at that time, and came up with this part that was perfect, and also dropped tuned, that's something very common now. It's hard to find a heavy band that doesn't experiment with that tuning or something like it, but at the time, it was really rare. Number 4, it's hard to pick favorite riffs and not think of Jimmy Page. There's another person that just did so much and rewrote the book, but along the way had so many great riffs that are essential. And it's really hard to pick just one. I'm going to go with Black Dog. It's not a simple riff. Some of the other ones I've named, you could learn them and you don't have to be that advanced on guitar. But to play the riff from Black Dog right, it's tricky. It's all single notes, got really interesting timing. It's so unpredictable. It might be hard for somebody to hum it who's not a musician. So it's challenging, yet it's instantly recognizable. It's very familiar, and it draws people in, whether they're musical people or just the average listener. It's hard to imagine without the band and Robert Plant and the whole package. But just on its own, that riff really stands out. Okay, final one. This is totally left field, off the beaten track as far as metal riffs, because it's not a metal riff. But Chameleon by Herbie Hancock, which was originally played on the clavinet, which has a very guitar-like vibe and sound. And at the time, there weren't a lot of riffs like that. I have to think that Stevie Wonder's Superstition is around the same time period, and it's the same type of riff, that it's very guitar-like, but not played on the guitar. You can hear it over and over, and I don't know how many times it happens in the song, but it never gets old. It's such a good riff and such a good hook that you just want it to keep going. Favorite metal band of all time? I'm going to go with AC/DC. If this was top 6 riffs, the next one for sure would have been AC/DC. If it was the top 10, they would have more than one entry. Not only some of the greatest riffs, some of the greatest licks. Underrated, I think, in a way, because it came in kind of in the shadow of Van Halen and Blackmore before that. But when you look at Angus on his own, I mean, it's just such perfect lead guitar playing, perfect rhythm guitar playing by Malcolm, amazing riffs. It's tempting to say Black Sabbath because they invented the rules. You know, they created the playing field. But you can't deny that Black Sabbath had some difficult periods. You know, they had this initial era where they came out bigger than life and changed the game. But it was so intense that even they couldn't survive it. And then there was another version of Black Sabbath with Ronnie James Dio, which was great. There are some versions that we can debate about whether they were up to the standard. AC/DC, to their credit, never veered far from what they do best. They've only had 2 vocalists, to my knowledge, unless you count Axl Rose filling in on some of the live shows, which is also great. But you know what to get with an AC/DC album. Some of them may be more definitive than others, but they always hold up. Everybody does what they do. There's not one where you say, oh, Angus just doesn't sound like himself, or Malcolm just didn't riff enough. They're consistent. So for I don't know how many decades now, they've been delivering. I think because of their consistency and their overall output, as well as their individuality, AC/DC to me is the greatest metal band of all time. This is Alex Skolnick of Testament here for Metal Hammer, and this has been my top 5 riffs.